It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. An audacious attack. Ukraine says it's hit more than 40 Russian bombers in a drone operation launched deep inside Putin's territory. Here, the government promises its defense review sends a message to Moscow with new weapons factories to be built. A denial from the IDF after reports of at least 31 people killed in an Israeli attack near an aid distribution center in Gaza. More than 1,000 migrants crossed the channel, the highest for a single day so far this year. Ugly scenes after a beautiful victory. 2 people die in violence following Paris Saint-Germain's Champions League win. Plus,
never forget! 84! Never forget!
Marching for justice. Thousands of Sikhs take to the streets of central London, calling for a public inquiry into the 1984 Golden Temple siege. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. It's being seen as a humiliating security breach for Vladimir Putin, and on the eve of peace talks in Istanbul, it marks a serious ramping up of the war. Ukraine has launched a large-scale drone attack against Russian military bombers, striking more than 40 warplanes hundreds of miles from its own territory. The operation involved the use of small drones smuggled into Russia, hidden in mobile sheds and launched from the back of trucks. Tonight, Russia's defense ministry accused Ukraine of a terrorist attack, while Volodymyr Zelenskyy hailed it as an absolute brilliant result, which will be in the history books. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett reports.
It is extraordinary footage, an onboard view of what Ukraine claims to be its most damaging drone attack of the war so far. According to sources, more than 40 Russian bombers were hit at bases across the country. One of the targets, deep in Siberia, 2,500 miles from the Ukrainian border. They are the planes Russia uses to fire long-range missiles, but it seems they won't be going anywhere now. The videos were shared with Sky News by a source in Ukraine's domestic intelligence agency, along with images of the drones before they were deployed. We're told they were launched from inside Russia, smuggled across the border in an operation that was supposedly 18 months in the making. The exact details are still unknown, but this is unquestionably an embarrassment for Moscow and possibly a serious setback. And that wasn't all. On the eve of peace talks aimed at building bridges, 2 in Russia were blown up, both in regions neighbouring Ukraine, with one resulting in multiple casualties. It was a road bridge over a railway. It crushed part of a passenger train that was passing underneath. Rescuers worked through the night to locate survivors amid the mangled wreckage. The scale of the damage became clear at daylight. A truck was on top of the bridge when it collapsed. The train was carrying nearly 400 people bound for Moscow. Russia's investigative committee linked the bridge explosions and called them terrorist attacks, while some politicians here have blamed Ukraine, accusing Kyiv of trying to sabotage Monday's peace talks. But on this, there was no word from Kyiv, just confirmation that a team will attend the negotiations. This backdrop doesn't promise much progress. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, let's bring in our security and defense editor, Deborah Haynes. Deborah, as we've been hearing, an incredibly audacious attack. What kind of response do you think we could expect from Russia?
Well, you can definitely expect a response. There's already sort of speculation online as to how Vladimir Putin might retaliate. But from the Ukrainian side, they get that retaliation every single day since Vladimir Putin launched his full-scale war more than 3 years ago. And actually, the Ukrainian president has just released more details about the attack in posts on social media, saying that extraordinarily, what he describes as an office that he says that the Ukrainian operatives, members of Ukraine's Secret Service, used inside Russia to run this operation, which has been 18 months in the planning, according to the Ukrainians. That office was actually right next door to a regional headquarters of a Russian FSB office. I mean, that's the Russian security services. So if that is confirmed, then that is a huge security humiliation for the Russians, that the Ukrainians were right next door to them, scheming to launch this attack. And the Ukrainian president also says 117 of these first-person view FPV drones were used in the operation, each one piloted by somebody. And also he said that 34%, so that's just over a third, of all of the Russian Air Force's strategic cruise missile carriers, so strategic bombers that can launch cruise missiles, he's saying were hit in this attack. That is a significant blow. And if confirmed, it really does make this attack, as the Ukrainian president has said, something that will go down in the history books, just as towards the beginning of the full-scale invasion when Ukraine sunk Russia's flagship Moskva warship.
Deborah Haynes, our security and defence editor. Deborah, thank you. And if you scan the QR code on your screen now, you can follow Sky News and Tortoise Media's new podcast series, The War Game, hosted by Deborah Haynes. It sees former government ministers and military and security chiefs take part in a game that simulates a Russian attack on the UK. Follow along now to get the first episode, which is out on the 10th of June. Well, as Ukraine launches an attack on Russia here, the Defence Secretary has said investment to transform the military will send a strong message to Vladimir Putin that the UK is stepping up its deterrence. Well, the detail will come in the Strategic Defence Review to be outlined tomorrow. Here's what we know so far. The UK will support the procurement of up to 7,000 long-range weapons. £1.5 billion will be invested to build at least 6 weapons factories. And the MOD says the additional funding is worth £6 billion in this parliament and will support thousands of jobs in the defence industry. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, reports.
The Defence Secretary says Britain must be ready for the prospect of war. And that means more factories like this one in Stevenage, producing long-range missiles, both for use in Ukraine and increasingly to replenish the stocks at home. John Healey said a major defence review to be published tomorrow will respond to the Russian threat.
The message to Putin is we take our defence seriously, we're stepping up our deterrence. We should expect to see new factories opening very soon. And we've already got strong munitions factories in every part of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And the investment we're making will boost the jobs in those areas as well.
Weapons and hard power will be part of it, but also billions for improving accommodation for our service personnel, which ministers say is in a dire state. Keir Starmer says the extra spending means the hollowing out of the armed forces will end. But with the Ministry of Defence already struggling to fund its current projects, many say the money isn't coming quickly enough.
Russian aggression is seen all the time, whether it's their destroyers provocatively sailing up the English Channel, whether it's the work that they're doing to undermine our cables at sea, whether it's their aircraft flying close to our airspace. We want to see the UK reach 3% within this Parliament. We think that 2034 is a long time to wait.
This is why military figures are concerned.
This has been a real wake-up call, the Ukraine war, because this is full-on war in an industrial age. The Russians are getting through 1 to 2 million shells a year. Now, we were producing just literally tens of thousands of shells ourselves every year. I mean, we're producing less in a year than they are firing off in a day in Ukraine. And so we've got now to build that right up to sensible war stocks.
With more of this set to dominate the coming years, there will be plenty of questions about how ready the UK can be and what may be sacrificed to pay for it. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Westminster.
And Tamara is at the Ministry of Defence for us tonight. Tamara, what more can we expect to be announced in the Strategic Defence Review tomorrow?
Well, look, I think we're going to get some strong rhetoric about war readiness and Britain preparing for new types of warfare. But I think the real question constraining the Prime Minister and his Defence Secretary is how much they're prepared to spend in order to counter the increased threats they will tell us that we are now facing. As well as these announcements about munitions, I think we're going to hear more about nuclear power, about cyber and drone warfare. What we may hear less of, though, is about any increase to the numbers of the armed forces, which are currently at a 300-year low of just over 70,000 full-time personnel. John Healey suggested in interviews today that it may be some years before that is increased. And although he had talked about a rise to 3% of national income being spent on defence, today he said that was back to an ambition and not a guarantee. So the only firm guarantee of funding that we've had is Keir Starmer saying that it will increase to 2.5% in 2 years' time. And so you've got the Conservatives today asking questions about whether Rachel Reeves was not prepared to fund an additional increase. The Liberal Democrats criticised the announcement, saying the government are foot dragging and not responding with the required urgency. And you've got a lot of Labour MPs who are concerned about cutbacks to public services, which might be required to fund all of this. So I think we're going to get some big ambitions tomorrow, but questions about whether the funding available is enough to meet them.
Tamara Cohen outside the Ministry of Defence. Tamara, thank you. The Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry says at least 31 people have been killed in an Israeli attack near an aid distribution centre in Rafah in southern Gaza. Witnesses say Israeli forces opened fire on crowds at a roundabout near a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation hub, a new aid organisation backed by Israel and the US. But the IDF has denied firing on civilians near the distribution site. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports.
They'd been queuing for food just after dawn near one of the new aid distribution points when the firing reportedly started. This video appears to show that moment.
Everyone was on the side of the road and they were shooting randomly at people. And the Navy was shooting and exploding bombs. There was no mercy. You say there is aid, so why is this happening?
Some of the bodies were rushed to hospital on the back of a donkey and cart. The emergency department at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis was packed. A British doctor working at the hospital filmed this video.
These are all gunshot wounds, and as you can see behind me, we've got all the bays are full and they're all gunshot wounds. It's absolute carnage here, and there are even more people in the main emergency department.
The IDF said it was unaware of any injuries, and the Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has claimed the reports are false, fake, untrue, and fabricated by Hamas.
The IDF said it's actually reviewing this issue right now to see it. They didn't have any information to give me before I came online with you. But I have to say that during the last week, we have heard so much propaganda coming from Hamas about the humanitarian distribution point that I wouldn't be surprised if that's another case like that.
The morgue in Khan Yunis was overflowing. Many of the dead were brought straight here. The health ministry in Gaza said that all of them were either shot in the head or the chest.
He went to get some food for this little boy. Why did they shoot him? Why did they tell them to go get aid? Why? They go there, and then they treacherously kill them. It's sinful what they're doing to us. They are lying to us.
The IDF released this drone footage today, which they say is armed Palestinian gunmen firing at people collecting aid. This was a different incident, and they don't explicitly say it was Hamas, but the Israeli military claims that it is an example of gunmen trying to prevent Gazans from getting food. There is still a desperate need for aid in Gaza, and the security situation is volatile, as people will do anything to get some food. The UN is delivering some aid, and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says that it's handed out more than 4 million meals over the past week. But these pictures from early on Saturday morning show how chaotic and out of control it is. Contractors in blue vests watch on as thousands grab what food they can. Israel said that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was set up to ensure aid didn't get to Hamas. But like this, there is no way they can know who is getting their hands on the food. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
The number of people who arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel in a single day passed the 1,000 mark for the first time this year. The Defence Secretary John Healey told Sky News that Britain has lost control of its borders. Our correspondent Ashna Hurinag reports.
Images like these are no longer rare. They're a reminder of a new record. Saturday saw the highest number of small boat arrivals in a single day. More than 1,100 people came ashore in 24 hours. The government, who have pledged to smash the gangs, say this can only be solved with those on the other side of the Channel.
Britain's lost control of its borders over the last 5 years, and the last government last year left an asylum system in chaos and record levels of immigration. I think yesterday tells us a really big problem, which is you've got French police unable to intervene and intercept the boats when they're in shallow waters. That means we saw it. We saw the smugglers launching elsewhere and coming round like a taxi to pick them up.
A taxi service is seemingly exactly what smugglers are advertising on social media. Videos set to upbeat music paint a picture that's plain sailing and far from precarious. And plenty are taking up the offer. 1,194 migrants arrived in 18 boats on Saturday. It means 14,811 people have crossed the Channel so far this year, a figure that's 42% higher than this time last year, despite net migration having halved. In February, the Home Secretary welcomed a new French law which would allow police to intercept the boats in shallow waters. But there's been no change yet.
There was a time when they were puncturing vessels, but you can see very, very large numbers of migrants. Not that many police around. I think it is dangerous for the French police to intervene. And I think it's easier for them actually to just keep a watching brief and allow people to come across. But I am worried that the French aren't doing as much as they might do, given the amount of money that we're giving them.
The government knows the smugglers running lucrative businesses are quick to adapt their tactics. They are keen to be one step ahead, but they know, with the summer season almost upon us, warmer weather brings more desperate people. Ashna Hurinag, Sky News.
24 hours ago, Paris Saint-Germain were celebrating their Champions League victory in Munich. Back in France, it was a different story, with 2 people killed and 192 injured as violence erupted across the country. Nearly 700 fires were started. More than 5,000 police had been deployed across Paris alone, with officers using tear gas and pepper spray on the Champs-Élysées. Sky's Amelia Harper reports.
This was what it meant to Paris Saint-Germain fans to win the Champions League. But what was meant to be a night of celebration instead turned to this. Thousands of fans rushed the streets, disorder underway. Fireworks were set off. Flares lit within the crowds. Lime bikes used as fuel for fires. Amidst the growing violence across France, 2 people died and nearly 200 were injured, including this man's wife and child.
We just left the hospital so I could go home because we've been there since last night. They both just woke up. My son is still in an induced coma in intensive care.
As cars were brought to a standstill, some shot fireworks at retreating police. Huddled officers clearly outnumbered.
As I speak to you, there are around 30 police officers who are injured, some of them seriously. I'm thinking of the police officer in northwest France who's in a coma after being hit by a firework, which was aimed at him.
But with over 5,000 officers in attendance, members of the French press question the police planning.
We've seen this numerous times now in Paris, and the police say they can't, but I do remember that during the Olympic Games it was absolutely impossible to do this because the protection, the police protection was much higher. I know that it's expensive to do this, but it's probably much more expensive to pay for the damage that has been done.
And the damage is clear. This white Mercedes, just one of the nearly 700 fires across the country. But within 24 hours, order appears to have been restored in the French capital. PSG's Paris parade overseen by police and the military. With the players safely escorted to meet French President Emmanuel Macron. Calm, finally, after the chaos. Amelia Harper, Sky News.
Let's go to Poland now, where the presidential election remains on a knife edge tonight. The latest exit poll, published in the last few minutes, has the nationalist pro-Trump candidate, Karol Nawrocki, narrowly ahead of his liberal pro-EU opponent, Rafał Trzaskowski. Now, the final results in an election which is being closely watched in the EU, Russia and the United States are expected to be announced tomorrow. Well, I'm joined by our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, who is following all the details. Adam, it's so close that both candidates seem to have claimed victory.
Yeah, they both did. Soon after the first exit poll came out, both candidates came out grinning and said that, yes, they were going to win. Of course, the truth is they don't know. None of us know, because this is so remarkably close that still we're in the area where it would be considered too close to call, that the smallest statistical anomaly could account for the closeness. Right, let's look at exactly where we were. When that first exit poll came out, it had Rafał Trzaskowski ahead by 50.3% to 49.7% ahead of Karol Nawrocki. So an absolute fraction. In the past few minutes, we've had what's called the late poll. This is a sort of updated exit poll. It's the exit poll blended in with some preliminary results. And effectively, they have traded 2 percentage points. So Trzaskowski has gone up from 50.3 to 49.3. Nawrocki has gone up from 49.7 to 50.7. But already people are saying, yeah, but you can explain that because the initial polling stations to be counted tend to be in smaller rural areas, which appear to have favoured Nawrocki. But I mean, look, you are looking at such tiny margins that it is going to be very hard, I think, to predict this until almost the last votes are counted. Looking at this margin, it is probably going to come down to potentially fewer than 100,000 votes. And this is a country of well over 30 million people. And this is crucial for Europe because these two candidates represent different futures and different presents. Why? Well, the president in Poland is not as powerful on paper as the prime minister, but has the power to veto legislation. So in other words, they can be enormously disruptive. They can gum up the system. If Nawrocki does that, if he wins this presidential election, he's going to do everything he can to stymie the more liberal premiership of Donald Tusk. He will stop his reforms and he may stop Tusk's effort to push Poland ever closer to more ties with the EU and in Brussels. On the other hand, if Trzaskowski wins this presidential election, he'll do the reverse. He's basically an ally of Tusk. He'll do everything he can to hurry along the reforms. He will want Poland to get closer ties with Brussels, where Nawrocki would like Poland to move further across the Atlantic and develop closer kinship with the United States. They differ on Ukraine too. Both still want to support Ukraine in its war, but Nawrocki does not want Ukraine to join the EU, and Trzaskowski does. He would welcome Ukraine's membership of the European Union. So this has ramifications for the EU, for NATO, for the United States, and for the whole coherence of the European Union. And it could come down just as one constituency's worth of votes.
Incredible stuff, and we should get final results tomorrow. For the moment, Adam Parsons, thank you. Pressure is mounting for a public inquiry into the UK's role in Operation Blue Star that led to the deaths of hundreds of civilians in India in 1984. Secret documents released in 2014 reveal that the Margaret Thatcher-led government at the time sent an SAS officer to help guide the Indian government with the attack. Thousands of protesters took to the streets in London today, calling on Labour to honour its pledge to fully investigate the incident. Sky's Amrit Singh Mann reports.
Never forget!
84!
Never forget!
An annual tradition in London. Thousands flocked to the capital today to commemorate Operation Blue Star, the darkest period in modern-day Sikh history. In June 1984, Indian forces stormed the Golden Temple, the holiest Sikh shrine in Amritsar, where armed separatists had taken refuge. The assault ended in bloodshed, with hundreds of civilians killed. 41 years on, this tragedy still strikes a deep chord with British Sikhs. In 2014, secret documents revealed that the government at the time under Margaret Thatcher sent a military officer to help guide the Indian government with the attack. Another memo stressed there should be no leak about the visit. If there were, it would be extremely embarrassing for both sides. And if the leak sprang from us, the Indians would never forgive us. The Conservatives have maintained that the UK's role in the attack was purely advisory and limited. But with many files still classified, the Sikh community are demanding full transparency.
I do believe in the British system, and I don't think they would have got involved if they had known that India was the aggressor.
Without justice, there's no closure. Simple as that. And that's what we're here for.
We're just begging for somebody to listen and to give us redemption.
Whilst in opposition, Labour made multiple promises for an independent inquiry, including in their 2017 and 19 manifestos, a public letter from Sir Keir Starmer as leader of opposition in 2022, and a social media post from the now Deputy Prime Minister a month before last year's general election. 11 months into power, no official update.
It's unacceptable that they made promises and they're silent. I think our message to Labour is it will be seen as an act of betrayal and we will never forgive.
We need to get to the bottom of it.
The highest profile Sikh MP is feeling hopeful.
Conversations that I've had with ministers, with others in number 10 as well, and that's what I've been told, is that it is under consideration. This is an issue that is just not going to go away, and the government needs to deliver on that inquiry.
What we want to know is what was the role of our government?
Back in London, a similar message. Amrit Singh Mann, Sky News, Central London.
Let's get all the latest sport now with Joe.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Andrea, 2 years on from your departure from Leeds United, how pleased are you to see them back in the Premier League?
I'm very happy. As a fan of Leeds, as ex-chairman, I'm very, very glad for the fans that they are finally back in where they belong, the Premier League. And it is a big release for me because honestly, I had a very traumatic and difficult exit, and finally I feel now that the destiny adjusted everything, and I can come back to Leeds soon.
Do you still speak to Parag Marathe and the ownership group?
Yes. I speak to him normally a couple of times every month, and we stay in touch during the season. We comment about Leeds, we comment about other football trends, but particularly about Leeds. And we just spoke recently this week when he was in Leeds, but also he was busy in Rangers for looking at new opportunity. I think Parag and the guys involved supporting him and the new management will have the credibility and the experience, they know how to take it to the next level. So they can take back the route and the direction to bring back Leeds as a, I hope, top club and back to Europe one day.
How difficult will it be for Leeds, that jump from the Championship back to the Premier League, because you've done it, and with success in that first season under Bielsa, Leeds finished 9th.
The gap between the Premier League clubs and the newly promoted club is getting bigger and bigger. In the last 2 seasons, basically all the club promoted bounced back to the championship. So this showed that the category is another level. It requires investment, it requires a new project, it requires a football transition, in some cases revolution in the squad. And sometimes when you do the right recruitment, it can work very well. Other times not. So that's also what we paid in the moment we had the transition with Bielsa to Jesse Marsh. We changed. I remember we sold 2 players, we bought 7, and unfortunately the recruitment was not successful for us to maintain the category. Same is when you come from the Championship to Premier League, the challenge is very big.
So the recruitment, you feel, is key to make that
absolutely
transition successfully?
Yes. And in our case, I think the mistake probably I've done and we have done is with the management is that we didn't hire enough players with maturity and experience in the Premier League, but we bet on players with high quality but no experience in the Premier League. So we brought in a lot of players from Austria or Germany or other country with no absolutely 0 minutes in English football, and that I think is a big gap.
The redevelopment of the stadium, you were heavily involved in the early stages of this. How key is that?
Important because it brings new revenue, new opportunity, it modernize the club, it gives a big boost. I remember when we were in the Premier League 2 years ago, we had 3.5 times requested for tickets than the capacity of Ellen Road. So it won't be an issue to fill Ellen Road every game. It's not an issue at all.
Do you miss the special atmosphere at Ellen Road?
Yeah, look, I have goosebumps only thinking about that. It was an amazing period of my life, but unfortunately the last 6 months, I think for different reasons.
Sky Business sponsors this report.